Good morning.
Good morning.
So first off, for this class today, I'm going to show a video. I'm not going to introduce you to what our lesson is for today, but the video will explain it, and then we can get more into it. All right? Make sure you're paying attention. Write down any observation that you see, whether it's what she talks
People with
about
borderline
or what she
personality
sees.
disorder experience chronic feelings of emptiness. They often become involved in a series of highly unstable relationships. They are irrational and have a pathological fear of abandonment. In this segment, observe the pattern of Becky's relationships and note the way that she has learned to cope with her limitations.
It's like I feed off of physical contact. I mean, and I know the whole thing about babies needing to be touched when they're little, and you know, there's that whole thing. So my feeling probably isn't uncommon, but to me, it's just completely overwhelming. I mean, it's like I'm a very touchy-feely person if you're in my little circle or whatever, but I mean, if I don't get that physical contact, I just that's another trigger. I'll start to go off into one of my cutting phases. It's easier to just be unhappy, because to be happy opens yourself up to, you know, if you're happy about a relationship, then that person can turn around and make a rude comment or break up with you or whatever. And if I think that they're being dishonest with me or that they're going to leave, I start to phase them out, so that when I do leave, it's not like you're being ripped up inside again. It doesn't matter if they're actually leaving. We can be at a store and I lose track of them. I can't see them anymore, and I absolutely just flip out. I can't breathe. I can't be around people. I mean, I hate crowds. Crowds just freak me out. And if I lose the person I'm with, then it just is compounded by 100,000. And then when I find them, I'm not very nice. I'm, you know, where the hell were you? And all sorts of profanities. And then once I calm down, I apologize and realize I was being irrational, but couldn't see that in the moment.
Like many people with borderline personality disorder, Becky has an unstable self-image, and she has difficulty distinguishing between her public and personal persona. Becky is a highly articulate woman, and therapy has helped her to become more aware of the challenges she faces. She is optimistic for the future, and she seems determined both to establish permanent relationships and to find healthier ways to cope with her anxiety.
I don't know really who I am. I'm trying to find out. I know that I'm someone that cares about people. And at moments when I have clarity in my head, I want to do something with my life. Take all the energy that I spend being unhappy and using self-destructive methods for coping. You know, I want to take that energy and do something productive. But after that, it just gets all black and tangled. Confused with who you are and what you think you are. When I'm out and about, I have a face that I let everybody see, and that's, you know, it's not overly happy, but I'll smile and make the small talk and play the politics and just be very nice and congenial, and everyone thinks that you're just wonderful, that you're on this straight path and you couldn't do anything wrong, and sometimes you even get put on a pedestal, things like that, and then you go home and you're left feeling that you're completely not that person that you portrayed at work or school. I hope that I learn enough to be able to cope and deal with my own demons, that I won't need medication, that I won't need therapy, that I'll be able to use what I've learned and what I've been through to turn around and help other people. I don't want to end up being 40 or 50 and look back and go, where did my life go? You know, I spent all this time being miserable, you know. And instead of sitting here complaining about all the things that are wrong, why don't I do something productive with that energy? And I'm getting better. I'm getting better at it. I have a friend that I've had for 5 years. So he made it past the 2-year mark. So I'm proud of that.
All right. Tell me some of your observations. Tell me some of the things you noticed.
It seemed like she rambled and talked a lot, and she was very anxious in the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, obviously they showed her self-harm, like the cuts on her and stuff like that, but I don't know.
I think she has a good. I mean, I think she can recognize how she feels. She feels empty and she feels confused and she feels scattered like two different people. So it's probably rough to put those two things together,
Mhm.
you know, on the day to day, like how you really feel and how you want to feel, I would say.
And how she was describing the relationships that she had with people. How she was this person that she pretended to be during the day, and then when she got home, she was left with herself.
Mhm.
And she did not see herself as anyone, important, anybody who's significant, anybody special, kind of having a crisis of her identity of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
She showed the primary traits of borderline personality disorder. So our lesson today will be about borderline personality disorder and the effect it has in the adolescent mind. And we're going to dive into more of the self-harm that you mentioned, the self-harm versus what it is when it becomes suicidal ideation and suicidal attempt. All right? Michael, can you read this for me?
This 30-minute lesson will focus on borderline personality disorder and the adolescent client. Through this lesson, students will be learning about the key signs and symptoms of BPD.
All right, so our learning outcomes for today. Upon completion of this lesson, students will be able to successfully what? Identify signs and symptoms associated with borderline personality disorder as it is presented in the adolescent mind, not just the adult, but also in our adolescent clientele. Differentiate between intentional self-harm and attempt of suicide. Those are the two things you'll be knowing by the end of this class period. At the end of the class period, after you've learned everything you learned today, you will teach me in a creative way what you have learned.
Okay.
Okay. This is my teaching assistant, Eddie. Eddie shows up several times. My goal is to make Eddie more excited about the topic. Right now, he is just being Eddie. Very bored Eddie. We see you soon, Eddie. Okay, signs and symptoms. I want you to take notes. First, let's see. I want you to put number one, first sign, abandonment. You don't need to write full sentences. Abandonment. Number two, unstable interpersonal relationships. Number three, poor self-image. Poor sense of self. Number four, impulsive. So out of those four, if we go back to the video, what are you noticing out of that conversation she was having?
Definitely number two, unstable interpersonal relationships.
Very unstable in personal relationships. In number one, abandonment. She had a fear of abandonment. And that is why she would push people away. She was, what did she say? She was cussing out people. She was fearing that they would leave her in some way. And that is the abandonment issue. She has a fear of abandonment, so the best way to control that fear is what? Push people away.
And it's interesting that she said even just at a grocery store or something, like it's just even in a moment. It's not even like with long-term
No.
situations, it's just like in a
No.
moment of being abandoned in a moment.
She has a fear of getting to know people because of the fear of abandonment. If she builds a relationship with anybody, whether, like you said, in the grocery store where you maybe getting to know a neighbor who you see in the grocery store, she wants to avoid that at all costs. That is one of the signs of borderline personality disorder. Now, the biggest one I would say next is number 5. Recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures, threats of self-mutilating behavior. This is your self-harm. This is suicidal attempt. We're going to get more into that one. So start, because you'll be adding notes to that area. Number 6, intense mood fluctuations. Now, the issue with diagnosing borderline personality is because it gets confused with bipolar disorder. The confusion is because both diagnoses have a mood fluctuation. However, it is important to note with borderline personality disorder, your mood fluctuates from euphoria, depression, and anger. But it does not last more than a few days. It can range from a few hours to a few days. Whereas bipolar disorder, it can last for months at a time. So it's a very quick fluctuation. Okay? Number 7, feelings of emptiness. Number 8, difficulty controlling your anger. You'll see a frequent display of temper and constant and recurrent physical fights. And stress-related paranoid ideation. So that is the symptoms for the adult and the adolescent. This is the diagnoses. Let's talk about what's present in the adolescent. In the adolescent, it lasts for a few hours and no more than a few days. But this is when you see the adolescent start a relationship with someone. And in that time period of their heightened anxiety or their heightened anger, they break the relationship. They act like they never liked the person. They push you away. It seems like they're very depressed. They seem down. And then all of a sudden, it's like their whole mood changes. And they're this euphoric person. They're the people pleaser. They are the people who are the leaders in the group. And what do we know about that from the video? There's a facade that happens as well. So then they fall back into the depressed state when they're home alone and that feeling of emptiness. Do we have any questions so far?
It's just interesting to me that the lady in the video says that she thrives on physical contact, but yet they don't want the relationship that goes with it. They just need like the person there, but not necessarily.
So if they're thriving for physical contact and yet still feeling empty, but don't want to get people close enough to get the physical contact, we can see why their mood fluctuates so often, because in reality they're hurting themselves by denying themselves the very thing that they want and the very thing that we need as human beings. We all need some type of physical touch. It's part of our love language. Okay, number 2. Symptoms of borderline personality disorder gradually improve with time. That is the difference you see in an adolescent who is diagnosed with bipolar disorder and an adolescent who is diagnosed with borderline personality. A child who has bipolar disorder, it seems like things just get worse and worse and worse, and they continue in this cycle of self-harm, destroying property. You see a cycle of 3 to 4 months where they're just not getting better. Borderline personality disorder, they have their moment that lasts a few days, and as time goes on, you see a change in the behavior. Next, the mood symptoms are externally triggered. If they perceive rejection, failure, and abandonment, their mood will shift between depression, anger, and euphoria.
Say that again. Their mood is what?
Their mood shifts from depression, anger, and euphoria. Can anybody tell me what euphoria looks like? Because we keep saying this word, euphoria.
It's like heightened, animated happiness.
Yeah.
It's just kind of over the top, really giddy.
Really giddy. You kind of seem like this fairy tale person who's really happy all the time, you're really giggly. You are the best person to be around and you're so happy. That is the facade of borderline personality disorder. Here I am, I'm really high, I'm high right now. I feel really good about myself. I feel really good about myself. You feel so good about yourself. We know when we're confident in ourselves, we begin to build relationship with people. But we have that fear of the abandonment. So then we see what happens. You push the person away because of the fear of abandonment. You're back to feeling empty. And then we see our depressive symptoms. Does everybody understand the cycle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next. Oh, we're still born Eddie. Look at him. He's just looking like, what's going on? Well, hopefully he changes his mind soon. All right. This is the important part because you're going to have a partner activity after this, okay? Self-harm versus suicidal attempt and ideation. I want you to write down NSSI. This stands for non-suicidal self-injury. This is your self-harm. When you see self-harm, you may see slits on the wrist. You may see rigid slits going up the arm, like we saw in our video. Did you see she had old slits covering her arms? This is not an attempt to kill. This is not an lethal cut. This is, I'm trying to make myself feel better in this moment because as someone who experiences so many emotions, when I hit the depressed state and I hit the anger state, I have so much built in me, I want to release it in some way. And that feeling of cutting releases that feeling from them. So you often see cuts, and sometimes they'll hide their cuts. They can hide their cuts between their toes. They can hide it on their thighs where they're always covered with pants. It's not always as obvious as your arm. What do you think a suicide-related lethal cut looks like?
Vertically down the wrist, or
That,
Just lots, heavy bleeding, like
Heavy
significant bleeding.
significant bleeding, arteries being cut, Obviously, if you see someone, their throat slit, that is lethal. No one would slit their throat just to release pain. That shows I'm ready to end my life. Certain statements. I'm ready to end it all. I no longer want to be here. And when you ask what here is this life. With self-harm, it's more of, I just want this feeling to go away. And the feeling I can get to go away is the feeling of pain I can feel. All right? All right, so I have a partner activity for you. I want you to go through and state which one you think is just self-harm and which one you think is suicidal ideation or suicidal attempt.
I'm just kind of talking out together.
Yeah, talk it out together.
All right.
And I want you to write why you think that. So I'm going to give you some time to do it. So I'll let you know when time's up.
Well, I think the first one is definitely suicidal ideation.
I'm ready to end it all. Yeah, it sounds like they just are done and feel like they don't have any other option.
Thinking about it and voicing it. Second one, I need to do something to make myself feel better.
I think that's a self-harm type of thing because it's in the moment. They want to get rid of whatever that feeling is in the moment. They don't necessarily want to be gone forever or whatever. They just want to
That feeling to be over.
feeling to be gone in the moment. Yeah.
Okay. I am done with this life and it is over. That's definitely suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely like they're not willing to want to do anything else at that point.
You are observing a resident who has severe bleeding mark or several bleeding marks on her stomach. Is this a suicidal attempt or self-harm? I would say self-harm.
I would say self-harm, but if you're cutting on your stomach, you could cut yourself deep enough that it would be hard. If it's just sort of like superficial cuts, then I would say so. But if it was sort of more deep and heavily bleeding, then that might be more of a problem.
That's true. Yeah, you could get like an organ or something. Resident stole in the house scissors and locked herself in the bathroom. And Peter says she told me she had a plan on how to escape this place. That seems like a suicidal attempt.
Yes, I agree. Especially since she said she had a plan. I think having
One
a
more
plan-
minute.
Having a plan is probably, more along the line of something suicidal if you actually have some sort of a method of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and where, and you're keeping other people away from stopping you. Then it seems more like it would be a suicidal situation to
Definitely
me.
giving yourself a chance, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to get it done. Yeah.
Okay. Time's up. All right, so read out to me. What did y'all come up with?
Okay, we came up, the first one, I am ready to end it all, was suicidal ideation.
Okay.
You want me to elaborate or just?
Yes.
Just because, she's voicing an opinion, she's not actually physically doing anything. to
Okay.
herself.
Rachel, help him out.
Well, I agree that it says, if you're telling somebody you want to end it all, then you just are feeling like you don't have a
Right.
out.
Right.
That there's no other reasonable way.
Okay.
I need to do something to make myself feel better. Like we were saying, it's more in the moment. It's in the immediate, I want to do something right now to take this pain away.
Okay.
So possibly the self-harm.
Self-harm, just because it's a release for them. They don't really have a good coping mechanism of how to get there. Whatever that emotion
Right,
is out.
right.
'Cause it may not necessarily be pain, it may be frustration, it may
Right.
be sadness, it may be whatever it is that they're trying to get out. So
Right.
that seems more like a self-harm situation. I am done with this life and it is over. Sounds pretty definite suicide statement.
Yes, that's definite.
Yes.
That is definite.
Cut and dry.
What else?
You are observing a resident who has several bleeding marks on her stomach. Is this suicidal attempt or self-harm? We kind of said probably more self-harm, just depending on like how deep the cuts were. Because if it went deep enough, you could potentially get an organ or something.
Right.
It probably would be a situation of self-harm.
Self-harm. If it's a superficial cut, you can tell when somebody's trying to stab themselves in the stomach rather than a superficial slit of the skin.
Yes.
All right, what else do you have? Last one.
Resident has stolen the house scissors and locked herself in the bathroom. Pierce says she told me she has a plan on how to escape we still felt like that was a suicide attempt, especially since there's a specific plan in
There's
place.
a plan, right. If they say they have a plan, this is suicidal ideation and suicidal attempt. This is not just a self-harm moment. A lot of people don't plan their self-harm. A self-harm is something that is impulsive. That's when you see the symptom of impulsivity. Self-harm can be impulsive in that moment. Someone has pissed me off and I'm so angry. I'm gonna go upstairs and I'm gonna cut myself really quick and then I'm gonna come back. And a lot of times they don't want to be seen. And unless it's attention seeking, that's one thing you do see in the adolescent clientele. Okay?
So how do you determine if it's attention seeking or actual?
Attention seeking. It's the placement of the cut. The placement of the cut is hidden when it's not attention seeking. When it's attention seeking, they'll come show you. It might be on this side of your arm where no one cuts on this side. Everybody cuts on the forearm, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
If they're doing it for attention, they'll come to you, they'll show you, and when you give in to that, oh, what's wrong, that's when they feel better. Okay? All right, so you have 4 minutes to teach me what you have learned in a creative way.
All right.
Ah.
All right. Like I want to come up with some own quotes of my own and make her.
Okay, we can come up with a few quotes and have her tell us what she thinks that they are. Or we could do like I could act like I was one of the girls coming to you.
Okay.
You know, where I can just you can sort of address me as I'm one of the girls we work with, I guess, and we can do both maybe in 4 minutes. What do you think?
I think so.
Okay, so let's go ahead and come up with a few more statements then.
All right. Let's see. Just be like what was it? I don't want to be here anymore.
Okay.
That's one thing I mentioned in the video.
How about I'm so sick of this place. I just want to be gone. Okay, let's do one more already.
It comes to you and shows you several superficial cuts on her, which she's obviously.
Okay. All right. So, you want to have her ask that, or do we want to go ahead and do her like me, sort of coming to you with?
We'll have her do this part first. And then
Okay.
So y'all ready for
Just
me?
see what she says beforehand. and then
Yeah,
she
we're
says-
gonna do 2 parts. We're gonna
Okay.
just do. We've made a couple statements, and for you to tell us what you think that they are, as what like you did for us. And
All right, are you gonna tell me the correct answer?
Yes.
Okay. I have to hold it up,
Yeah,
guys.
far
I
more
need
than
glasses. I don't want to be here anymore. Self-harm.
Well, I think it could be. What was your thought on it when you wrote it down?
This is more suicidal ideation because the here, I should have put in quotes. Is referring to this plane of existence. You know, it's,
Perfect, you're right. I was just making sure you knew.
Yeah.
I am so sick of this place. I want to be gone. Suicide ideation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Resident comes to you and shows you several superficial cuts on her arm.
So I'm gonna just do that here. for a
Oh,
second.
okay.
So we're
We
gonna
have a skit.
Yeah, we have a little skit. So, Mr. Sweeney, oh my god, look, my arm. Look,
What's wrong?
look, you see my arm is bleeding. I need you to take me to the hospital right now.
Alright,
Like, I need you
let's
to,
go to the
I need
office.
to know, I need to go
I can
now.
take you to the office,
Like,
I can give you some
come on.
band-aids.
Look, don't you see my arm is
Yes,
bleeding?
it's
Don't
bleeding,
you see?
yes.
Don't you
Just
see?
come with me to the office.
Okay.
We'll get some band-aids and we'll get something to put on your arm. We'll make everything better, okay?
Okay, come on. All right.
Okay. Yes. So we have tackled both learning outcomes, and you have clearly shown that one, you understand the signs and symptoms of borderline personality disorder and the difference between self-harm and suicidal ideation. Great class.
Okay.
Thank you.